What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Q&A this week. We are talking all about the strike, the SAG-AFTRA strike, the WGA strike, what it means for us and our channel, and what you guys can do to help support.
We did have several people ask about this, but we were going to cover it anyway. And I want to point out first that we're recording this on a Tuesday, and it's going to come out on a Saturday. There's a possibility that more information could come out. A lot is happening very quickly. We're trying to read and learn. So, if this stuff is outdated, we apologize, but we wanted to just say that this is coming from everything that we know as of Tuesday. Mm-hmm. But across the board, from what I've seen from people in SAG itself, WGA, they've said that something that we can all do is just help spread awareness. Mm-hmm. So that's part of what we're going to do here. And we're going to talk through both unions and the strikes and what it all means. But I was also going to point people to Dan Murrell's video. We can link to that because Molly gave that to me and was like, I think that's the most informative breakdown from someone who is much closer to the industry than we are.
Dan puts it in layman's terms pretty well for most people to be able to understand what the strikes are, what it means for what we love dearly, our TV shows, our movies, and all that stuff, and like what we can do going forward.
Yeah, Dan is just someone who I trust as an industry expert, someone that I go to for that side of the business where I'm just like, I know a lot about Star Wars and timelines, so that's where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. But basically, the WGA, the writers, and SAG-AFTRA, the actors, they're striking against the AMPTP, which are the producers, the heads of Amazon, MGM, Apple, NBC Universal, Disney, ABC, Fox, Netflix, Paramount, CBS, Sony, and Warner Brothers.
All the big guns.
Right. And we're talking specifically about film and television actors on strike. Dan goes into how video games, interactive entertainment, audiobooks, commercial actors, TV anchors, stuff like that, they are not on strike. To put it into Star Wars terms, Star Wars Jedi Adventures is going to have some new episodes on August 2nd. Ahsoka is on the way. That would be stricken content, but Star Wars Outlaws, a video game, is not, even though it probably did use SAG actors, mm-hmm. if that makes sense. We're mostly talking about film and television because of the reasons for the strike, which we'll get into.
Right. So if there's any SAG-AFTRA people working on Star Wars Outlaws, I think it's really up to them what they do going forward, but they may choose to not do any active promoting just to keep things super safe. But technically, by the strike's terms, they would be allowed to do so for the video game itself because the strikes don't cover video game stuff.
Right. I believe so. And again, this is all very confusing. It's fairly new to us. We're trying to do our best. Again, we're not experts. We're trying to just do our best to educate people on why the unions are striking and what we can do to help and how best to move forward. The reason for this strike is mostly because of streaming and AI. It's the advent of new technology, new ways to watch film and television, which Dan does a good job of breaking down. The past two strikes, big strikes from like the 1980s and the 1960s, when like SAG and WGA, when they struck together, it was about new technology mm-hmm. and television becoming more and more prominent and residuals for when movies played on TV and stuff like that. So new technology always seems to spark new greed in the producers, and then the unions have to strike in order to get their fair share, to get fairly paid and fairly treated.
Yeah, it seems like every time there's a big break like this in new technology, the higher ups find a way to cut corners for everybody else so that they're continuing to make the most money while paying the actors and writers the least that they possibly can.
Right. So streaming is obviously this newest iteration of a new technology, a new way for us to all enjoy content. And it's tougher to make a living off of streaming because basically residuals are terrible. I've seen a lot of SAG members sharing their residuals that they've gotten from big shows that they've worked on, or the struggles that they've gone through just to produce those shows, like Orange is the New Black on Netflix. The actors were talking about having to take cabs to and from the set. Meanwhile, Netflix is promoting it as the most watched show that they've ever had, and like this many million viewers tuned in all the time. And they're just not seeing the fair share from that.
Right, and a lot of shows now are just shorter.
Yes, exactly.
There are just not as many episodes as there used to be for a running TV show.
It's as much work, but it's not as much final content. So, you know, they get paid per episode, I believe. And that's also not to talk about the visual effects artists who they're not on strike right now, but they have been talking about how they have these strict deadlines for these huge productions, and that they're like constantly in crunch and not being treated fairly either.
Marvel, looking at you.
Right. And there's little to no transparency on actual streaming numbers because no streaming will publicly share their analytics.
Right. Which is wild.
Right. Like the actors and the writers would like to know how many people did watch the stuff that we made so that we can accurately negotiate moving forward. Okay, and the other big issue is artificial intelligence. No surprise there. It's been a hot button topic as of late. The big thing that I've seen thrown around is the fact that they want to do a full body scan of like background actors, and they come in, they get paid for 1 day of work, and then they will own that likeness to do whatever they want for eternity.
For as long as they want. They can take the body scan of an actor who's gotten paid for 1 day's work and use it for the rest of eternity, like you said, and they won't see a dime.
Yeah, no consent, no compensation.
Right. It's kind of like Jennifer Landa talked about
bring this up, yeah,
in the latest Force Center podcast, because she's done stock photos, stock photography, which is like they pay you a couple $1,000s to like model for a photo that you then agree that people can use by paying for it through stock photo websites. But this is different.
It's that on steroids.
Right.
It's that, but even worse, where they can animate your artificial likeness to do whatever they want and be in anything, and you get no say. And the thing is, a lot of the up and coming actors, they might have to consider that just to make money. Like, I think that there can be a misconception that all of this stuff is about A-list actors demanding more money from the producers. And while they are on strike, yes, it's about the 87% of people who don't make enough to get health insurance under the union, which they have to make $26,000 a year. And 87% of people in SAG do not make enough to make health insurance. So that's what they're striking for. It's up and coming actors who are just trying to pay rent and put food on the table and get health insurance. So when the opportunity arises of like, okay, do I take a day's work of pay and sign away my likeness forever? Like, that is a real consideration for some actors. And it shouldn't be.
Right.
It shouldn't
because,
have to be.
I mean, if that starts to happen, that becomes kind of some people's only option.
Right. And so that's what it comes down to, is writers and actors, they just want to be paid fairly for the work they're doing and with transparency. So that brings us to Bob Iger and his completely tone-deaf statement.
Oh, Bob.
Oh, yeah. Not great, Bob. He said that the strikers were being unrealistic and disruptive, which is the point of a strike, while he was literally at something that's called Billionaire Summer Camp. This is a man that makes $27 million a year. On the low end, that's before bonuses and stuff. He makes $73,000 a day. And he's saying that these people who don't make $26,000 in a year are being unrealistic. So that was just upsetting, to say the least.
For so many reasons, and for so many people to hear that was like a big shock.
It was just the least self-aware thing I could have heard. There was another quote that really set me off. Some anonymous executive told Deadline, "The end game is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their houses. A cruel but necessary evil." So they admit to being cruel and they admit to being evil. Like, that's who we're dealing with here. Is these few people in power. To bring it back to Star Wars, we're talking about the few people that have power and want to use that power to control everyone else.
Palpatine, Tarkin, Vader.
Exactly. Like that is what we're looking at, is these empires. I saw someone tweet and compare Bob Iger to a lord looking down from his castle, his billionaire summer camp, and complaining that, oh, the serfs are being unruly today. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. That's how it is. And to put it into George Lucas's words, he's talked about, fear to anger to hate. There's a great video I've referenced many times where he talks about you start to get invested in material things like wealth. If that's what you're attached to, you start to get more and more of it, because every little bit you get, it makes you feel less good than it did before. So you need more and you need more. And then you get attached to it. Then you become afraid that someone else is going to take it from you. And then you start to get angry at those people. And like, that's basically what we're dealing with right now, is people with power afraid they're going to lose it.
And, in the 80s, what was it? The person in charge of Disney was making maybe 30 times what the lowest paid employee was making, and now Bob Iger makes 400 times the amount that the lowest paid person at Disney makes. Yeah,
just this absolute continued disparity of wealth and control that continues to happen. And they're even doing, Molly showed me the tweet from Universal lot where people are picketing, and they trimmed all the trees so there wouldn't be shade. It's like little petty things like that.
Yeah.
Just every little thing.
Like, someone made that decision and they were like, you know what? The picketers are out there enjoying this shade and it's making them stay out there longer. Go trim all of the leaves and all the branches off all the trees so they can't get as much shade, so that maybe they get exhausted faster and maybe they leave.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring up Iger's comments about how, and this wasn't necessarily strictly related to the strike, but I think it is, and I'll get into it. But he talked last week about how there might be a slowdown in Marvel and Star Wars content. And he went on about how, mostly with Marvel, that all of the streaming shows have diluted the brand and they need to maybe pull back a little bit, which that's your fault, Bob. Like, Dan went into this and he's right, but that was Bob's decision to go all in on Disney Plus and make all these Marvel shows, and Chapek's decision.
Well, over the pandemic, it was the CEO's decisions to start pushing more and more and more to streaming. Some stuff direct to streaming, some stuff it was like, we'll put it in the theater, but quickly get it to streaming. And then they see that they're not making as much money on those projects, and they wonder why.
Right. And they seem to be wanting to blame the writers and the actors who didn't make those decisions. All they did was perform the job they were given, which they were like, we want all these Marvel shows, so write them and act in them. But now it seems like the timing of that comment makes it seem to me, especially after he said all the stuff about how they're being unruly and this is disruptive and blah, blah, blah. I feel like he's trying to get fans against the writers and the actors and be like, boy, if this strike doesn't end, if the writers and actors don't want to get back to work, then I guess we just won't see as much Marvel or Star Wars.
Yeah, it feels like a threat.
Right. And that is not the case. Like, I want to make it clear that we are on the side of the people who actually make the stories that we love and watch. and not the people who are now like blaming the writers and actors for the brand being diluted. Like, I'm not even saying that that's the wrong decision to pull back a little bit, because I mean, I'm feeling a little burnt out on Marvel.
Yeah, we've been hearing that this was going to happen for a long time now. Like, I forget when they originally came out with it, but yes, there have been a lot of Marvel streaming shows come out, and so like it makes sense to pull back a little bit because they're just hemorrhaging money. So we've seen what's coming down the line for Star Wars. They haven't really given us a super solid idea of like when we'll see it and like how close together they'll be, but I think we'll still see a lot of the projects that they have planned for Star Wars. But you know, the longer the strike goes on, the longer the delays will be.
Right. And that's kind of one of the questions, is like, how will this affect the stories that we love? And yeah, it depends on how long the strike goes. It could last a month. It could last several. I don't know. But the longer it goes on, the more likely it is that we'll see delays. Like, I'm basically expecting right now that Skeleton Crew will probably be pushed, Acolyte and or season 2. Like, they might just spread that stuff out a little more to shore up the gaps in content.
Yeah, it'll be similar to what we saw happen to the industry because of COVID.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear that that's fine. Like, the strikers should do what they need to do. I can live without Star Wars for some extra months. Like, we'll figure it out.
Plenty of books to read.
Right. There's books and comics. We'll cover those, as we always have.
Star Wars Outlaws will be out eventually. We'll have a video game.
Yeah. But that's I just want to make it clear, we are on the side of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA, because these are people who just did their jobs. They did what they were asked, and then the fruits of their labor, like they're not allowed to see how many people watched it with full transparency. And in some cases, like Willow or several other shows across several other platforms, have just been removed, so they don't have to pay those meager residuals that they were going to anyway.
Right. So like, actors and writers are trying to gauge how much they should be compensated by the view count, right? Of like how many people watched the show. And because streaming services won't release that information, they're going to third parties to get a rough estimate on how many people watched the show. And then the studios and the streaming services are like, no, that's wrong, but we're not going to tell you what the right answer is.
Right.
So
it's all very messy and complicated and confusing. Again, we're still trying to learn all of this. But moving forward, what is our plan for our channel as content continues to come out? This is also very confusing to parse through, and it's going to be different for, I think, every podcast or YouTube channel or whoever. We were looking at all the rules to follow. First of all, we're not members of SAG or the WGA or anything.
We're not union.
Right. We're not union. We're just Star Wars fans in Atlanta. But like, I want to point out that, yeah, we have a large platform. Not the largest, but big enough that I'm like, I want to use it responsibly. And I want to use it to honor the writers and the actors and their hard work. And so Variety put out a very helpful article. Gizmodo did as well, of basically, if you're an entertainment journalist, a critic, an influencer, like all these different things. And we kind of fit under all of the umbrellas in some way. So again, we're doing our best to follow their guidelines as set up in the ways that they want our support.
The biggest thing that I noticed reading through all this stuff was they were kind of pushing towards the idea that influencers get directly paid from the struck companies to promote their product, to promote a new show or a new movie. They're getting paid directly from Disney, WB, Sony, whoever, to talk about and spread the active promotion of those projects, which we don't get paid by Disney or any of those companies.
Yes, correct. But there are some promotional opportunities that we have had in the past. Like we were invited to the Andor premiere, and we flew ourselves out. We paid for our hotel, but still, that felt like something that we were allowed to access, and obviously we would want to talk about it. So that feels like promotion at Disney's request.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to do anything like that. You've also seen us get access to talent. We got to interview several cast members from Andor. We interviewed the creators of Young Jedi Adventures not too long ago. So there is a chance that we might get some invitations like that in the coming future. We're going to turn all that down. Those are basically the rules that SAG members have to follow. And in solidarity, we want to keep doing that. So that's kind of like the influencer column. But then there's also entertainment journalist critics, which we do that stuff as well. And they have said that doing reviews, still okay. Covering the news, still okay.
Reviews, reactions, pretty much all the content that we put out about new projects as they come out is fine to do as a fan, as an independent critic. You know, these are just opinion pieces from us.
Basically, we just will not take any paid opportunities from Disney or any other stricken company. I don't know why they would reach out, but we're talking about Disney and Ahsoka. We will not take anything paid from them. I don't know that we've ever even gotten anything like that in the past.
No.
We've had invitations to opportunities, but even that, we're going to turn that down. Just kind of act as if we are members.
Right.
Just to,
if we get sent any boxes of stuff,
they always ask for permission to send it, so we would just say no.
Yeah, we would turn it down because they're not paying us for that stuff or for our opinion on it, but it's a gift that is giving us a special opportunity to promote whatever it is that's in that box.
Right. So we're just going to turn all that stuff down, be fans. We're still going to review. We're still going to cover Ahsoka, but we're also going to include a disclaimer in all of those videos, which this is going around online. I can put a link to it in the description as well, but it's basically a group of entertainment journalists, and they have put together this disclaimer to say, we're talking about whatever that, in our case, we're talking about Ahsoka, and we acknowledge that it would not have happened without the hard work of the WGA and SAG, and here's some more information on the strike.
Right. Keeping the strike information relevant and on people's minds is key here. Like keeping it in the conversation, making sure everyone knows where we stand on this stuff. So like we're still going to put out content covering Ahsoka. It'll all have that disclaimer on it as long as the strikes are still going.
Correct. And that's, again, as just fans in general, the number one thing I've seen people say to help is to spread awareness. So we want to use our platform to continue to do our jobs, but also in doing our jobs, spread awareness about the strike, keep people appraised of what's going on. And,
no one's asking to boycott anything yet. It may come to that, but as of right now, it hasn't. So to cancel your subscriptions, to not consume certain content, to not watch movies, to not watch the streaming shows, that's going to hurt things as well as trying to help, if that makes any sense. Because the less number of people that watch the streaming shows, as that goes on, the studios will see, oh, well, this show isn't doing well, and so it'll get canceled. And so the writers, the actors who would have worked on that show for more seasons would not be given an opportunity to do that.
Right. And this is where it all stays very confusing, because like actors cannot promote their projects. And that's why there might be an uptick in offers for influencers to promote in their stead. But I've seen people say, SAG and the WGA are not calling for a consumer boycott. They might in the future, but right now they do want people to watch their stuff because yes, if the numbers dip, then it could provide leverage for the producers to say, well, like, no one wants to watch your stuff anyway.
Also, you may see...
It's all confusing.
You may see directors out actively promoting projects. The directors are not part of the strikes, as far as I know.
They're not, which there's people wish that they had stricken, because then that might make this go even faster. But
it would have been more powerful had
yes.
the writers, actors, and directors all done strikes together, but the directors already struck a deal.
Yes.
Early on.
But still, it's good that SAG joined the WGA, because that means that hopefully the strike won't last that long.
Hopefully they'll come to terms that everyone can agree on and that are fair.
Yeah, it's very possible. I'm not holding my breath, but it's possible that this could all be resolved before Ahsoka. Like, I mean, we've been talking with other podcasters and YouTubers, and everyone has like a different point of view, and many of our friends are part of SAG. Like Jennifer Landa is part of SAG, and so her considerations have to be different from ours. And it's all very strange in this weird online world. Mm-hmm. Everyone I've seen is just doing their best, and we're going to keep our eyes on the guidelines of what SAG wants. If they change what they said about, like, you know what, we don't want you all non-members to do reviews anymore, then we will adjust. Mm-hmm. But for now, of all the research we've done, this is the best version that we've come up with to be supportive and also not do anything that like an actual member would have done normally. And there's another thing that has gone around that you can help support the strike. There's a solidarity fund for all of these writers and actors who are currently not working, that you can donate to that to help ease their time during the strike. But
we'll have a link to that.
Yeah, I'll put links to a bunch of resources down in the comments. I think that's everything that we are going to cover for the strikes. Again, I would go check out Dan Murrell's video.
Also, Greg Alba over at The Real Rejects put out a really great informative video about how this affects influencers and you know, content creators on YouTube specifically. So we'll link to their video as well.
Right. Just kind of the do's and don'ts. But yeah, that's it for the first part of this video. To talk about something completely different, and that is definitely not a stricken project, I've been talking to the people that produce the podcast, The Redemption of Jar Jar Binks. It is a TED Talk podcast, and it is all about the advent of motion capture, Ahmed Best creating the first digital character. I think you can understand where it's going. Just the reaction to the character, how it all happened thanks to the internet, and where it all goes. There've been 3 episodes right now, and I've listened to all 3, and they are genuinely great, very insightful, telling me details, especially about Ahmed Best's life that I never knew. It's really about humanizing Jar Jar Binks, and how in the build-up to the film, to Phantom Menace, he was not humanized. He was kind of thought of as Jar Jar Binks and not as Ahmed Best playing Jar Jar Binks. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting, but I agreed to give them a shout out. This is not a paid promotion. I just like the show, and so here is their little promo.
I'm Dylan Marin, and I have 30 seconds to convince you to listen to my new podcast about Jar Jar Binks. Yep, Jar Jar Binks. Okay, so Jar Jar was actually played by an actor named Ahmed Best, and he became the subject of one of the internet's very first hate campaigns. So we made a podcast all about the early internet Star Wars cultural backlash, Jar Jar, and what happens when internet hate gets too real. Whew, okay. Listen to The Redemption of Jar Jar Binks wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we talked about a lot of very serious, important issues, and we didn't want to leave the Q&A with just that, so we're going to do one kind of fun, goofy question here. Lennon X wants to know which Star Wars character we would like to see on Hot Ones.
I thought that was a goofy, silly question. Anytime I get a question about food in Star Wars, my first go-to is Dexter Jettster.
Yeah, because he would be a good food critic as well as just fun to watch talk about anything.
It's like so many questions we get about what character would you want to see do X. Dexter Jettster is just a good answer all the time because he'd be great to interview. He has a ton of interesting stories. He's been alive for hundreds of years. He's done all kinds of jobs. Mm-hmm. And he's a cook. So he would be like, oh yeah, this wing's pretty good.
Yeah, he'd have informed things to say about the food itself too.
Yeah.
Hondo is one that popped into my head quickly just because we're doing a Rebels rewatch. We've seen several episodes now with Hondo in them, and I'm starting to like him more and more and more. And like he's probably got 1,000 really cool stories to tell.
Yeah, he's another one with just great stories. He'd be a fun interview. So tell me about the time you lost control of your pirate crew or the time you fought Darth Maul. Like just hearing his responses and how I'm sure he'd give completely unreliable narrator style answers about how he single-handedly defeated Maul and Obi-Wan and Anakin weren't even there.
Right. Although another fun one would have been Thrawn because he's so poised.
That's such a good answer.
He's so poised and like controlled. He hardly ever, like gets super worked up. So for him to have to eat super hot wings,
I love that answer.
I would want to see him break.
That actually,
what would happen.
like, that's the kind of person who you watch the show just to see what happens. Yeah. Whereas Hondo or Dex, you're like, I bet they have some cool stories. But to watch Thrawn get to the bomb and just completely fall apart or like try to compose himself and tears are coming down his eyes.
Yeah. If you don't know what Hot Ones is,
I'm sure people do. If you're watching this channel, I think you...
It's a show on YouTube where they interview celebrities and also make them eat progressively hotter and hotter wings. So
Thrawn's also from an icy homeworld. I bet he's not good with hot food.
Yeah.
I could just see him really losing his composure. It would be hilarious. Now I hope Lars Mikkelsen is on... Oh, well, probably not during the strike.
Probably not, yeah.
But what a joy that would be.
To think of Thrawn and how hard he is, how hardcore he is, I imagine he has a pretty delicate palate.
I think Yoda would be fun too. Like kooky Yoda. Empire Strikes Back Yoda.
Yeah.
That would be fun. Mace Windu, kind of for the same reasons.
He would just be
Thrawn.
giving the interviewer crap for what kind of food it was. He'd be like, now let me tell you.
How do you get so big eating food of this kind?
Let me tell you about my root leaf stew.
Yeah. He'll make some root leaf stew for Sean. Put some Diablo in it.
Yeah.
Or a bomb.
Yeah.
That's the bad one.
Although he's been alive for so long, his taste buds may or may not work anymore. He could just eat the hottest hot wing and be like, okay.
Who do you think would do the best? Who do you think like it wouldn't phase them at all? Ember the Charhound, probably.
Yeah, Ember. I was thinking Sebulba maybe, because is he from Mustafar?
No, he's from Malastare.
Malastare, that's right. I don't know. For some reason, I thought Sebulba would go hard on some hot wings.
Yeah, it's just any random Mustafarian, I imagine, would handle it just fine.
Yeah, Vader. Although, can he eat solid food?
He'd have to like blend it up and drink it through a straw or something.
He's in pain all the time anyways, so
yeah.
I don't think a hot wing would bother him.
He gets to like the last wing and it just makes him more powerful. I'm so angry.
He's like, this is nothing compared to the fires of Mustafar.
If we want to go another food character, Porter Engle is a good choice. Mm-hmm. Anyone that's known for being a cook in Star Wars, I would like to see that happen.
Yeah.
Lando would be fun.
I would like to see Afra, just because she would probably be really funny to watch. A fun interview.
Honestly, it's like everyone I think of, I can think of reasons why they would be fun on the show. Because Star Wars is just full of big old characters. Yeah. I mean, don't you want to see Din and Grogu together?
Yes. But Din wouldn't take his helmet off. He'd be like
shoving wings underneath the helmet.
Stuffing the wings, yeah.
But Grogu probably wouldn't even know what's happening before he starts shoving the 10th and hottest wing in his mouth. I mean, come on. So cute to see him try to deal with that.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.